Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks believer. After a busy start to the free agency signing period, the Milwaukee Bucks have not made any notable transactions over the past couple of days. Because of that, I think that it's time to recap what the Bucks did during this past offseason. Before we get into Milwaukee's big offseason moves, I think it's important to keep in mind which players were already under contract as part of the Bucks' long-term core. Each one of Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez, Dante DiVincenzo, Pat Connaughton, and Jordan Nwora were already signed to guaranteed contracts for next season prior to the free agency period beginning. This is a really solid core that made up most of what was a championship-winning team last season, but they were left with a few big holes in their rotation, mostly backup point guard and backup big man. The Bucks front office's biggest job in this offseason was to address filling in those two holes. The first piece of work for the Bucks front office this offseason was the draft. Milwaukee entered the draft with the 31st pick, but they would use that to trade down with the Indiana Pacers, acquiring the 54th and 60th picks, as well as two future second-round picks down the line. With the 54th pick, Milwaukee selected Sandro Mamukelashvili, a big man out of Seton Hall. Mamukelashvili was signed to a two-way contract for next season. With the 60th pick, the Bucks selected Yorgos Kalaitzakis, who is a wing player from Greece. Kalaitzakis was signed to a guaranteed deal for next season and will be a part of the Bucks' 15-man roster. The next big piece of the offseason was free agency. Before we get into the players that the Bucks were able to sign, let's first touch on the guys that they lost from last year's team. The most significant of these players is PJ Tucker, who signed a 2-year deal with the Miami Heat. In Tucker, the Bucks are losing a versatile wing defender who was incredibly important for them in their championship run last season. Additionally, the Bucks are losing Bryn Forbes, who signed a contract with the San Antonio Spurs. Forbes was really important in the Bucks' regular season rotation last year, as he was one of the most efficient three-point shooters in the entire league. He wasn't as effective in the playoffs, so for that reason, I wouldn't consider him to be as big of a loss as PJ Tucker was. Next, the Bucks traded away Sam Merrill in the Grayson Allen trade. Merrill didn't play too much last season, but showed some potential to be a high-level shooter during his rookie year in limited playing time. While the Bucks did lose a key player in free agency, they were also able to acquire multiple guys who have a chance to be big contributors in next year's postseason. First, the Bucks re-signed Bobby Portis to a 2-year deal with a player option on the second season. This was a massive signing for the Bucks as they kept the fan favorite Portis around at a discounted price. Portis will fill in that backup big man position that they needed at a very high level, just as he did last season where he finished 9th in 6th man of the year voting. Next, the Bucks added some wing depth, signing Semi Ojeleye and Rodney Hood to 1-year minimum contracts each. After that, the Bucks used their taxpayer mid-level exception to sign George Hill to a 2-year contract. Hill was terrific in his last stint with the Bucks and will be a massive upgrade at the backup point guard position over what Jeff Teague gave Milwaukee throughout the course of last season. Finally, the Bucks made their biggest trade of the offseason, giving away Sam Merrill and 2 second-round picks to acquire Grayson Allen. Allen is one of the most intriguing players on the Bucks roster for next season, as he figures to compete with Dante DiVincenzo and Pat Connaughton for big minutes at the shooting guard position. While the Bucks have already made most of their offseason moves, there are still a few small pieces of business that need to be resolved. The first of these is the status of 2 players on non-guaranteed contracts for next season, Elijah Bryant and Mamadi Diakite. The Bucks have already filled all 15 of their roster spots for next year, so in order to retain Thanasis Antetokounmpo, who is currently a free agent, Milwaukee will either have to cut Bryant or Diakite. The Bucks seem to like both of these 2 players quite a bit, but since Thanasis is Giannis's brother, I think that they will most likely sign Antetokounmpo to a guaranteed contract for next season and cut either Diakite or Bryant. Even if the Bucks do end up cutting one of those two guys, there is still a chance that they could retain them, as Milwaukee has an open two-way slot for next season. In addition to all of this, the Bucks also will have some contract extension negotiations going on with two players who are in the final year of their rookie deal in Dante DiVincenzo and Grayson Allen. Both of these two guys are extension eligible, and I expect the Bucks to get a deal done with at least one of the two, as it appears that it will be important for them to have someone locked in at that shooting guard position long term. The number one goal for each NBA front office every offseason is to improve their team's roster. While the PJ Tucker loss does hurt, I still think the Bucks were able to do that as they retained Bobby Portis and added impact players in the backcourt such as George Hill and Grayson Allen. The Bucks didn't have a flashy offseason by any standard, but they were able to improve a roster that was already championship worthy last season, so I'm very intrigued to see how all the pieces gel this year and whether or not the Bucks will be able to make a run at winning their second consecutive NBA Finals championship. Be sure to let me know what you thought of this video in the comments section down below. Also, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, especially if you are a fellow Bucks believer. This is the place for you. Thank you all for watching today's video. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.